This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So President Trump continues to deal with the fallout from his post-Putin presser and the hysteria on the left, the call for hearings and whistling in the translator to tell us everything that all of the national secrets Trump so clearly must have conveyed to his Russian operator Putin during their sit-down. Trump talking to CBS News, Jeff Glor, yesterday, and here's what he said to Glor that he said to Putin about interfering with our elections.
We're not going to have it, and that's the way it's going to be.
But he denies it, so if you believe U.S. intelligence agencies, is Putin lying to you?
I don't want to get into whether or not he's lying. I can only say that I do have confidence in our intelligence agencies as currently constituted. I think that Dan Coates is excellent. I think that Gina is excellent. I think we have excellent people in the agencies, and when they tell me something, it means a lot.
Something that one wishes the president would have said in the moment at that press conference, but that's more of his backpedaling. But the real question, Amy, of course, is
what?
That soccer ball.
Yeah. What's in the soccer ball? Huh?
Oh, what's in the ball?
What's in the soccer ball? Soccer ball. What is in that soccer ball that Putin gave
that
Trump?
There might be a taping or some kind of recording device inside that soccer ball. Don't kick it too hard.
The Daily Beast went into some detail about how a listening device could easily be embedded in the stitching of the soccer ball.
And I suggested that they give that soccer ball to the kids in Thailand who just got out of the cave. That would be a nice gesture.
Yeah.
Kick this around, kids.
Okay. Here's the thing.
Did I just wink at you?
Here, if Trump is Putin's Manchurian candidate, if he's Staff Sergeant Raymond Shaw, then why would you need to embed a listening device in a soccer ball? You already have him. You've already flipped President Trump. Why would you need the soccer ball? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. You see how the plot doesn't hold up?
Maybe he just took it from the World Cup game.
I think
France beat Croatia 4-2.
I think the Democrats need better spy novelists writing their stuff, is my point. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Steve Cortes, CNN political commentator and former Trump Hispanic Advisory Council boss. Steve, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning, Dan and Amy. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. So are you concerned about Putin operating Trump, having a man in the Oval Office, and should there be hearings and ultimately, obviously, a trial for treason?
Right. Well, if you listen to mainstream media, you would think that Trump gave Alaska back to Russia the other day with Putin. But look, I said this last night on CNN, and I really believe it. I think that this whole Trump is compromised / Russian agent, / Manchurian candidate, this whole theme of that he is beholden to Russia somehow has become the birtherism of the left. And I really believe that. And it's just as silly. It's just as loony. Rather than talk about, here are the reasons this man that we don't trust got elected, and here's why we lost. The right did this. The Alex Jones of the world did this during President Obama's era. Instead of focusing on his policies and why he was in a policy sense incorrect, they tried to delegitimize his candidacy and his legitimacy as president by saying he wasn't born here. That was just silliness and lunacy. We see now the same thing on the left with this Russia theme.
So you're saying that
they still haven't gotten over 2016. They have to concoct and make up a reason why he wasn't legitimate in the first place, and he didn't really win. It was only because of this Russian interference that he won.
So do you think that President Trump was born in Kenya? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Is that what I'm hearing?
No, and listen, look, I'll be the first to obviously admit President Trump went down that road as then private citizen Trump, a birther, and that was nonsense. He did disavow it during the campaign. It was good that he did. So you can come back from this. He became the president of the United States. I would advise the left let go of this absolute Russian fairy tale. You lost the election because you lost blue collar workers in the Midwest. That's the reality, not because of the Russians. Moscow, Idaho matters a lot more to most Americans than Moscow, Russia.
Yeah, but do you think that President Trump was kissing his butt a little too much? I mean, Putin seemed to control everything. He was an hour late,
Right.
Which I thought was a sign of disrespect. But I don't know. During that press conference, too,
soccer
it just
ball he brought.
Yeah, I don't know. I just had
Amy,
an
listen,
uncomfortable feeling watching it.
I wrote about this on Real Clear Politics. I don't always defend the president, even though I'm staunch advocate of his in general. I thought he was far too deferential. I thought it was one of the only times him not command the scene. It looked to me and a lot of this is just optics and style, not so much substance, but still that matters. It didn't seem like he was in charge, and I thought he was way too deferential to President Putin. I'll be the first to say that. Now, in his defense, it was the end of a very arduous week in Europe, most of which was highly contentious. So, I think we have to sort of give him a pass if, he earned a mulligan on having perhaps an off day. But it was an off day, in my opinion.
Well,
and I agree. And I want him to appear stronger. I think he has been totally strong on substance in terms of policy. And I mentioned this also last night on CNN. Chris Cuomo really pressed me about, tell me something he's done that shows strength against Russia. I said, well, I'll tell you one thing is, for the first time that I know of, at least in the history of, since the USSR, we just in the battlefield in Syria slaughtered hundreds of Russian troops, of Russian mercenaries, so effectively Russian troops in Syria. That is not a sign of weakness. That is not a sign of, we are beholden to you in any way. And I don't happen to love our intervention in Syria, but putting that aside, the fact is American armed forces just really laid it to Russian armed forces in Syria. And that is not the action of somebody who is scared or beholden, or somehow compromised by Russia.
That's true. Dan Hendra has an interesting piece in Wall Street Journal. He talks about Trump's approach in these areas. Trump insisted on these one-on-one meetings with China's Xi and North Korea's Kim and Russia's Putin. Now that he's had that, maybe he needs to go back to the basis that has provided some of his great successes domestically when it comes to things like picking Supreme Court justices or cutting taxes. And that's lean on the experts and the personnel that he's put around him. And in this case, since he's again expressed yesterday confidence in his national security team, Pompeo and Mattis and Bolton and Haspel, lean on these individuals when it comes to the policymaking and even the communication about the policymaking in the international arena.
Right. Again, I think that's a good point. I think that he and it's interesting. So you mentioned Xi and Kim and now Putin. In all three of those cases, in dealing with despotic leaders, and all three of them are, his approach has been to lavish praise on them publicly, but then I believe in terms of policy, take a very iron-fisted approach. So he's kind of taken the Teddy Roosevelt view of speak softly but carry a big stick. And I think for the most part, it's been very effective. In this case, I think he missed the mark again, with President Putin, not so much in policy, of course, but in optics and for the American domestic political life. So I think your point is well taken. Mike Pompeo in particular, I think is perhaps his best asset in the entire cabinet. I would love to see his role elevated publicly. And would it have been better to have Mike Pompeo in that meeting and then have his, Russian counterpart, I think it's Lavrov, in that meeting and have it be the four of them? I think that would have been a good thing. And going forward, probably a good thing from here. Yeah, so I think you make a great point.
All right, he is Steve Cortes, CNN political commentator, regularly matches wits, well, more than matches wits, with the likes of Chris Cuomo. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.